the Tomes and Tropes podcast, where books and friendships collide. I'm Becca.
And I'm Keri, and we're two friends who love to talk about books. And today we are talking about Divine Rivals Part 3, which is the final part in Divine Rivals.
Yep. Quick trigger warning, even though this book is a YA fantasy, there are some mature themes throughout. Please check out our show notes / description for any trigger warnings. If you want any additional details, check out our book bait episode about Divine Rivals, where we introduce this book and go over the trigger warnings without any spoilers.
And speaking of spoilers, we will be spoiling the entire book. Since it is the last part, we will be talking about the entire book. So go finish reading the book and come back when you're done.
Exactly. So now it's time for our chapter summaries, our one-sentence summaries, where we summarize each chapter we're going to be going over in this episode in one sentence. As a reminder, in this episode, we will be talking about Part 3, The Words in Between. Chapter 29. Iris and Roman's bumpy journey, in more ways than one, land them shadowing the Sycamore platoon, ending with paper and feelings flying across the trenches.
That was a really good summary.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a really good sentence. Okay.
I was so proud of that one. I cannot even express.
I love it. I was like, I already saw bumpy when we were doing this, and I was like, I already know it's going to be good. I can't read the rest, though. Anyways, moving on. Chapter 30. After having a dream where she saw her mom again, Roman provides comfort in the trenches.
Chapter 31. Roman comforts Iris while Dacre rains terror down onto the trenches and they begin to run, but that didn't feel right until they were running for their lives.
Chapter 32. With smoke, fear, and blood everywhere, Iris gets Roman to safety so he can get medical care for his wound while he is only worried about his bag.
Chapter 33. Iris gets back to Avalon Bluff and is reunited with Addie and Marisol, but is dismayed to find Carver hasn't written until she remembers the letter in her bag that puts her into a mental spiral.
Chapter 34. With conflicted feelings, Iris visits Roman in the infirmary where they share their first kiss.
Chapter 35. Addie convinces Iris to talk to a dejected Roman Kit, where she invites him to their hill, answers Carver's questions, and ends up running away again, but only to find Roman help.
Chapter 36. After making up, Roman and Iris talk freely and openly, where she says yes to Roman's proposal. Oh.
Chapter 37. Iris and Roman flirt over stories and tea until Keegan comes barreling in asking for Marisol and warns of coming danger, which means they will need to make a life or death decision to stay.
Chapter 38. In between preparations for the dangers that are coming, Roman enlists Marisol and Addie to help him get married to his girl.
Chapter 39. Roman and Iris don't get a chapel, but do get hitched, and they explore each other in the dark while waiting for tomorrow.
Chapter 40. Chaos erupts as gas-filled bombs are being dropped onto Avalon Bluff where Iris gets separated from Roman, but is taken to safety by a masked stranger.
Chapter 41. Iris sees death so much it is a memory before the bomb hits the ground and sprays gas that is binding, but she gets saved by not Kit, which turns out to be long-lost Forrest, and she watched Roman fade into the field fighting to get to her.
Chapter 42. After a tense journey back to Oath with Forrest, he and Iris return to their home and she finds a letter she left on the ground that said, "It's me, Kit."
Epilogue from Dacre. Dacre wanders around Avalon Bluff looking for souls and finds a cold soul in Roman and takes him below.
Ooh.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that is how Divine Rivals ends. Now, we are still going to be following through with Ruthless Vows, but for Divine Rivals, that's how it ends, is with Roman being taken below, which is so crazy. So, Keri, what did you think about Part 3?
I loved Part 3, especially the first couple times I read it, but I did think it was super rushed. So much was happening, such a short amount of time. We got too much in each chapter, if we're being honest here.
Yeah.
But the writing was really beautiful. The story is tension-filled. We get a first kiss proposal and a wedding in this one part, which is a little much.
Within 3 chapters.
Yeah. It's just a little much. And we also find out Forrest is actually alive, which is also a lot to process. There's just so much to process in this part between them being at the front lines and Roman being injured and all that happens in the relationship. So I really think I would have enjoyed this more if it was drawn out. And I really think like she could have maybe cut part two down a bit or just in general given us more in part three. I think that would have been better. But I did love all of it. And I love the things like when they were learning to drive the lorry, and it was just such a sweet part. And I've seen a lot on TikTok that call this book cozy, and I think part three is like very cozy, like very makes you feel good inside. It was just great. What did you think?
That's so interesting that you said that because I was thinking the exact opposite, that like parts 1 and 2 are the cozy parts of this book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So part 3 for me was really hard. It almost felt like it should have been 2 parts in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And with the first part being when they go to the front and they experience that and their journey and talking to the Sycamore platoon and all of those things right up until they get back and they find out that, like, Iris finds out that Roman is Carver. And then part 2 is like everything after that, at least for me, right? I really enjoyed the first part of part 3 where Roman and Iris were at the
Yeah.
front. I felt like we got a lot of tension there, but I felt like it was like I felt like we were actually in the tunnels with them and we got to hear the stories at the front line, which is something that I really enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of interesting because I'm typically not like a wartime book, like historical. I just don't like those kinds of books normally, but I really really enjoyed that part of it. I did not so much enjoy after they came back, like from the hospital, like once Roman was like out of the hospital.
Mm.
Like you said, it felt too rushed for the end, and especially after he like got out of the hospital. I also always hate the I get to stay here and fight and be brave, but like you need to leave for me and be safe for me. Like I just
No.
really hate those. And I think like that made me really dislike Keegan, which I wanted to love. Like I
Mm.
wanted to love her so much, but she just like didn't take Marisol like seriously at all when she was like, "No, I can stay" and whatever. So that was hard. We also get that with Iris and Roman and whatever.
Mm.
So like
Mm.
I just don't like those conversations. They're just like too cliche. And then for those of you who did listen to our book bait episode, which if you didn't, highly recommend going back and listening to.
Go
But
back there.
for those of you who did listen to them, I made a comment at the beginning, or yeah, I made a comment at the beginning of that episode that when I was reading this book for the first time, I probably would have rated it 3 stars. And after I like when we were talking in the bookmate episode, I said like how excited I was that we were going to read through it because I really thought it was the time in my life and what I was looking for in a book. And the book that I had read before was just like it left me in such a book hangover. And like that's why I thought I gave it 3 stars, because looking back, like in my memory, I was like, oh, it's so cozy and warm and whatever. After finishing reading part 3, I remembered why I rated it. I would have rated it only 3 stars. And I think maybe it went up a little bit. And we'll talk about this later in our tour de tome. But it, I really had to think about my rating again. And this is the last thing I'll say because I did not talk about this a lot. I don't know if you talked about this in any of your quotables, but I did not like how Forrest was presented in this part at all. It was like a complete change in who he was at his core. And it just like aggravated me so much that that's how he was presented. So
Mm.
we'll talk about, I will talk about more about that in one of our later segments when we talk about what we hope for from Ruthless Vows. But yeah, so all that to say is part 3 was a struggle. I liked the first part of part 3. The second part of part 3 was too rushed and a lot of my least favorite cliches in books. So
I love it. Yeah, it was a. I just feel like she could have given us a lot more in part three, but it did feel very like YA in this part. And I think I would have loved this in high school. So would have eaten it up. But like as an adult, I'm like, I could have really like, especially because I was reading this at the same time I was reading Akatar, like listening to Akatar, I was like, crap. Like they go into so much detail, but then like Rebecca
Yep.
Ross was just like no detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard because, we do get used to reading once you make that change from YA. And, I wouldn't necessarily say that's true for everything because I would argue that we got a ton of detail from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
That's true. Yeah.
So I don't know if I would necessarily say that it's a YA type thing. I think obviously this is a YA fantasy, and we do have to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it's a YA to new adult, or if it's Rebecca Ross's writing style, or what it is. I don't claim to know enough about that to make a statement. But
I
yeah,
guess
it
we'll
was
see.
it was a little hard, especially compared to the caliber of books that we have been reading lately.
Yeah. So, for our next segment, we are doing our meet cutes, and we only met really two significant characters here. So, the first one's Keegan. She is Marisol's wife, who is a captain for Enva's army, and she just seems really sassy, strong, probably strong willed more so. And I really want to see more of Keegan and Marisol in the next book. So, hopefully, we get more of her. And then we also got to meet Forrest, obviously, Iris's brother, who is alive. We find out in that letter, but we find out he is a deserter of Dakra's army. So, talk about a plot twist. We had that dropped on us. So, I'm excited to learn more about Forrest and see what's up with him and just hear his story again. And then I just wanted to give a shout out. We did meet a lot of other soldiers in this part, but we just don't have the time, nor do I think they are as significant as the other two to cover them at this now, but they were important to the story, just not important to meet cutes.
Yeah.
So no offense to them. They're fictional, but still no offense.
Yeah, completely.
Love
So
it.
our next section is our quotables, and as a quick reminder, these are in chronological order within the book. So we'll be starting at chapter 29 and going all the way to the epilogue. These are specific quotes and or parts that we just want to really dig in and talk about, or things that we think are funny, or things that we just love. So, Keri, do you want to kick us off?
Sure thing. So the first one is in chapter 29. This is when they're in the lorry going to the front lines, and he lies again and he squints. So we talked about that in part 1 and how he squints when he lies and how Iris mentioned that to him and his nan noticed it. And so she notices again here. So that was really cute.
Now, this one is so funny for me because Iris doesn't ask, like Iris asks if he's squinting. So like
Yeah.
Iris doesn't even notice. Like Iris doesn't look at him and he's squinting. She asks him, "Are you squinting?" as a way of asking that he lies, which I think is just beautiful.
Yes, she knows him so well. And then chapter 30 is our next quotable. This is when she's having that really bad dream with her mom and she sees her again, and how Roman just like comes to her immediately and comforts her and strokes her hair. I just love this part because one, it's just super sweet. And I feel like this encapsulates what we want to feel and have in a future partner or spouse. And I know that like when I'm sad or anxious or whatever, like it just feels so good when my husband plays with my hair and just calms me down. It's just the best.
It
It's the
is
best
the
feeling.
best. It truly is the best. I love when people play with my hair.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Okay, so our next quotables, we're moving through these. I'm impressed. We're
I
already at
know.
chapter 31.
Look at us.
So in chapter 31, we get two quotes very close together that show us where Roman Kit's mind is. And I want to read them both really quickly and then we'll dive into them. So the first one is, like I said, they're both from chapter 31. The first one is because that was all that really that mattered. Because that was all that really mattered to him, the things in his bag and Iris sitting across from him. Very soon, they would return to Avalon Bluff and he could finally draw a full breath. He could finally have a moment to relax. So that's the first one. The second one says, that was what he was absolute. Oh my goodness.
Uh,
uh,
it's
okay.
okay.
The second one is that was what he was absently thinking about. His gratitude for the wind, Iris. His future articles, Iris. How much longer until sundown? Iris. When the blast came, rupturing the quiet, blue skied afternoon. So I so the first one is very very early on in chapter 31, and then about 4 to 5 paragraphs we get the second one where it's like Iris is just filling his thoughts, and he is completely head over heels for Iris and is like genuinely thinking about their future. Like we've said so many times how he never really disliked her and he really fell first, which by the way, I love when the guy falls first. Just got to throw that in there. But I think this is not just falling in love, right? This is not just he's falling. Like he fell. He is legitimately making plans for their future. And it's like all he can think about. Like it's not the second quote is like he's really not thinking about these other things. He's thinking about Iris, and these other things just happen to be like, oh, squirrel, but back to Iris. You know what I mean? So it's just he has little side thoughts in between it. And I was just cracking up when I was reading this because, of course, it was just funny.
Mm.
But then the blasts come, and I also really appreciated how Rebecca Ross did this is like we as readers were distracted. We were thinking about how Roman was thinking about Iris and exactly where Roman was. And then the blast come, and we were surprised and abruptly reminded that we were in this war zone and
Oh
the
yeah.
terror associated with it. So well
Mm.
done, Rebecca Ross, to
Well done.
completely divert our attention because I don't know about you, but mine was definitely averted.
Oh yeah. And so this is when we get like his first view of like how he's imagining the future with
Mm.
Iris, and then we get hers after she, I think, either after he gets hurt or after she finds out that he's Carver. I don't remember exactly, but we get it later on in the book. And so she's imagining like, oh, I can't live without Roman. I just want to have those lazy days with him. I want to live plant a garden with him, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that was really cute. I like how she showed their love and their desire for a future together in a different way and in different seasons. Like they were like not they didn't happen at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree.
I also had one from chapter 31, and
Okay.
he says, like, he's realizing he doesn't want to live without Iris or her words. I think this is around the same time as your quotable, but I just love that his love for her is so focused on her intellectually, and he didn't fall in love with her appearance first, which happens in quite a few books. So I love that, like, difference. He's not, like, taken aback by her beauty or anything. So I just love that. And also, you can't relate because I know you haven't watched this movie, but the this whole part reminded me of the Green Gables movie number 3 specifically. So
Mm.
it doesn't follow the books at all, which is a whole other tangent we can get into one day. But I do love the movies in the books as a separate. I'm gonna go down this tangent, so I'm gonna stop. But I could imagine the trenches that like being the scared for your loved one who is fighting also reminded me of this in the first part where she goes to find Forrest, but in Anna Green Gables movie, Anne is going to find Gilbert because she hasn't heard from him in a while. And so they're like in the war zone, they're fighting, she's a nurse, whatever. It's a great movie. And it reminded me a lot of this. So I kind of hope Rebecca Ross had that in her mind because that'd be really cool. But
I
yeah.
am nodding along with a smile on my face because I have no idea what you're talking about with Anne of Green Gables, and you're just going on this tangent about these characters, and I'm like, yep, sounds good.
Reader or listeners, we got to get Becca to read Anne of Green Gables and watch the movies. Literally, the movies. Any New Girl fans out there? She and Jess and Cece watched the first Anne of Green Gables movie and get high. It's so great. 10 out of 10. Love that episode.
That's really
Anyways,
funny.
I could go on about the movies and books all the time, but we won't do that because we're talking about Divine Rivals.
Yes.
So My next one is from chapter 33. So this is when she's realizing that Roman was Carver. She was going through it. Girlie was going through it. The panic and confusion and the hurt she felt when Carver didn't leave her any messages, and this whole journey that she goes through, like emotionally, of being like, ugh, Carver didn't reach out, and then like reading the rest of Carver's letter, where she starts piecing together everything and finally realizes, oh, this is Roman. Just she was so angsty, and I was here for seeing that side of Iris.
She was very angsty.
I loved it. And then I just had to mention chapter 34, the kiss. Yes. Here for that's all I have to say about
What
it.
a fiery kiss.
Oh my gosh. 10 out of 10. Great job, Rebecca Ross.
For being a YA book, I felt it was very well written.
Very.
It was not just like, oh, they kissed. Nah.
Yeah, it was good.
My next quote is from chapter 34, and it says, I'm coming to love him in two different ways, face to face and word to word. And this quote comes from Iris's letter she writes to herself after she finds out that Roman is Carver, and she is just writing out all of her feelings. And I felt that this was a really creative way for us as readers to witness Iris's spiral of emotions after finding out that Roman was Roman Carver Kit, right? I struggled a little bit with this part because it did almost feel like we were being told how to feel rather than like allowing us to feel what we wanted to feel in that time. So that was a little hard for me, but at the same time, I have to write to process my emotions. That's how I process things. It's how I organize things in my head. If I am struggling with like not knowing what to do, my first instinct is I need to write it down. I have a huge whiteboard in my office, so when I get confused at work, not that I get confused, but when I get overwhelmed at work, I will like write all of that down. I color code it. I do the same thing. I have a journal that I will write things down and I need to emotionally process something. So I definitely understood Iris's need to do this and how she did it. I just, as a reader, I didn't appreciate being told how to feel, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah. But Keri, I do have a question about that. So you all just heard how I process things. How do you write to process your emotions or do you do something completely different?
I definitely used to write to process things. I don't I think I talk more through it now, or just think more through it, or like I don't know. I should write it down because that's when I've been able to process more healthily.
We are all about healthy emotional processing over here.
We need to work on it.
Gotcha. Okay. Didn't mean to open a can of worms.
It's not. This is just a reminder that we should all process things.
And there are multiple ways of processing. Talking it out
Exactly.
loud is a great way to process things.
Exactly.
Yep. Perfect. All right. On to our next quotable. I have two from chapter 35 that are completely separate. So the first one is, but now she felt uncommonly shy and the words were like honey on her tongue. This was when she and Roman are walking up the hill to like after they make up and she's trying to get him out and about because he's so like depressed in his room. And she gets like nervous and doesn't know what to say because like things have changed, right? Now she knows that it's Carver. And I cannot even express how much I felt this when I was reading this. So, my husband and I, when we were dating, we were long distance for 2 years.
Dang.
And we were we texted a lot and like that's how we got through it. But like when he would come home, I would always feel awkward that first day of like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. Do I give him a big hug? Do I not? Do like we talk about this? Do we not? Like it's just very awkward. And the description of the words were like honey on her tongue, like completely made sense because honey is so sticky and uncomfortable and like awkward in your mouth if you're just taking like a spoonful of honey. So definitely like great description here, and I completely understood this, and I think anybody who is in a long distance relationship probably did too.
Yeah. Good call out.
The second quotable from chapter 35 is, quote, he effortlessly, oh my gosh, why can I not read today?
I feel like
We're
after
like out
listening
of,
to Book Bound Besties, I like it just makes me feel so much better about this thing because they're just so relatable and I love them. And they just laugh like we do and I'm not that bad.
okay. Chapter 35. He effortlessly caught her hand in his, and they both came to a halt in the middle of the street. And this made me smile while I was reading it. I was like smiling and like kicking my feet because I love it when like Liam does something so effortlessly and like catches my hand or something like that. Like he just like is so aware of me and like where I am in space that he just is like so he'll just grab my hand or like move. I love when he like will like grab me to like move me out of the way because I'm like off in my own world. Like he's just so good at that. And like the way that Rebecca Ross like explained, like he effortlessly caught her hand in his. I just loved the way that that was described because like Liam is so effortless with his like love and like direction of like loving me in that way. So I
That's
just
so
really enjoyed
cute.
that.
That's so cute. I love that.
I'll keep him.
You should.
Yeah.
Okay. So our next quotable, we're skipping quite a bit, but it is chapter 38. So this is after they're like prepping for the war, like any of the dangers that are coming. And she just took a shower. She's like, what's going on? Kind of vibes is what's happening. And this is a direct quote. It says, Iris Addy said, it only makes this all the more beautiful. The two of you have found each other against great odds. And if this is your one and only night with him, then savor it. So this is when she's like, should we even go through this wedding? like this seems wrong. But I love this quote and how beautifully written it was and just how true it is. Like you just feel this part in the chapter or in this book like, oh, hold on, I gotta start that over. This is how I felt in this part of the book. Just love this whole chapter and the next one about like, oh, should we do this? But like there's happiness even when death is coming and like that type of thing. And I just really liked how that was painted in words that Rebecca Ross did. So great job, Rebecca Ross.
Yeah. I think that goes to show like the chapter title for chapter 38 is The Crime of Joy.
Mm.
And I loved that chapter title. For those of you who know, I've been on the chapter title kick all this whole book, and
You really have. I love it.
I think it's going to continue to Ruthless Vows. So I'm really excited. But I think like The Crime of Joy is such a perfect way to explain that too.
So true.
My quotable is also from chapter 38. It's right around the same time, and it says, it's coming from Addie, and it says, I'm telling you that Roman Carver Kit is in the garden waiting to marry you.
Oh, so cute.
And it was just so cute. And I love that Addie got to deliver this line because, like, she's the bestie. She's the bestie you want to tell that information or you want to
Ugh,
hear that information from. So I just really enjoyed that.
yes. She was so cute. Like and I'm glad that we got more of their friendship in this part a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, chapter 39. Whew. Okay. So the quote that I have is a funny one, and it's God's Kit. She said before she could stop herself, "What now?" And this comes right after Iris and Roman get married, and they go upstairs, and Iris is just feeling super awkward and uncomfortable and not sure what to do, and is totally like inside her brain, like not really experiencing anything. She's just like inside herself. And Roman sees this and he tries to help, and she just like snaps at him. So I think his question is like, Iris, I have a request or something. And she goes, God's kit, what now? And she's just like so like uncomfortable, and like her like awkwardness and anxiousness just comes out, and like she just snaps at him. And I also get awkward in social situations sometimes. Like if we're in a large crowd of people, like I get very uncomfortable. And Liam is so good. This is just apparently an I love Liam episode. But he
You should
is
definitely listen to this. He'll feel really good about himself.
he will. It's a Liam appreciation episode. But he's just so good about helping me get out of my head in those social situations. And more often than not, like he gets the brunt of my unease, because I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, don't talk to me, or whatever I say in that moment, because apparently I'm mean to him or whatever. But he's so good about trying to get me out of my head, and he does a very good job. And I loved this quote because you could feel the awkwardness from the situation, and you could feel her unease that just like snaps because she's not sure what to do. And it just
Yeah.
it made me laugh as I was reading through it.
This chapter was really funny. Like, to add to that, like it, like you said, it was so relatable, and like where she's so awkward this entire chapter. It was like, yes, me too. Same. And I like the same thing. I just naturally make things more awkward than they need to be. And Jesse is good at calling me out about it and just giving me peace and being like, what the crap? Stop being awkward.
Yep, exactly. Okay, and then later in chapter 39, we get this quote: The darkness rushed in, surrounding them, and yet Iris had never seen so many things before. So this is giving Into the Woods, I know things now. So for those of you who have not seen Into the Woods, it's a musical from, I think it's a Sondheim musical, right?
I think so.
But it's a very fast-paced musical, let's say. It has an aggressive pace, but it's basically, for those of you who don't know, it's basically this like multiple storylines, multiple fairy tales that get all brought together in the woods, that like kind of join all of these fairy tales. And one of the fairy tales is Little Red Riding Hood. And in the show, she gets her own song, and it's called I Know Things Now. And it's when the little girl now knows things she didn't know before. And the song literally says, quote, isn't it nice to know a lot and a little bit not? And this is exactly what I thought about when I read this line, because like Iris is about to know some things, and maybe it's good to know a lot, but maybe it's not. We'll see. I think we can consider that it's probably a good thing in her situation, but
Sure, it helps with the awkwardness.
I'm sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And then chapter 41. Quote, she saw Roman. They were alone in the garden again, but it wasn't in Avalon Bluff. It was a place Iris had never seen before, and she was on dot 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 dot. So this is a very, very long sentence, a very, very long quote. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we have two musical references in a row, and I'm
Look
really
at
proud
you.
of this.
On
So
fire.
this is right after the gas bomb gets dropped in between her and Roman. And she basically is having a Hamilton I dream of death so much it is a memory moment, because she literally goes through and talks about her mom and Forrest and Roman, and like all the things like in the future she wants to do, but all the people she would see if she died, and like all of these things. And she's dreaming so much of death that it becomes a memory. And anyway, so that's what Hamilton does in that song. And I could probably quote the whole thing if I wanted to, but I will save y'all's ears. But Iris is basically doing the same thing here.
I love that you had two musical references in a row.
Back to back.
Also, speaking of musical references, this is like back to part one, but I completely forgot to mention this in part one, but like Roman and Iris's relationship reminded me a lot of like Glinda and Elphaba at the beginning. Like loathing, unadulterated loathing.
Yep.
So funny.
What a time.
What a time.
What a good musical.
The best. Anyways, back to Divine Rivals, because we could talk about musicals all day. But chapter 41, yes, we're there. Almost got lost for a second there. But it says, a cold pang of terror shot through her. It was a fear she had never felt before, and her hands and feet began to go numb. My brother is about to kill me. So this is when, obviously, she realizes that it's not Roman, and Forrest is taking her away from Roman, and she wants to get back to him, but he's like being kind of aggressive and getting her to safety. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was like a very tense moment and it was written really well, where she's like, my brother is literally about to kill me, because she's like getting scared, which in her defense, one, she wasn't expecting to see Forrest. Two, there's so much going on. There's literally gas bombs and she just got married and it's just chaos. So much going on. So, and then three, she lost Rowan and she's super confused. And then four, Forrest is not the same Forrest she remembers, which is scary. Like, she has been imagining her reunion with her brother and like imagining their life and remembering their life before. And now he's not acting the same. So she's pretty scared, which is very understandable.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I really did not like how Forrest was represented in part 3.
I'm interested to see the Forrest we have in Ruthless Vows.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so our last quotable comes from the epilogue. We moved through these really
I'm proud of
quickly
us.
today. But our last quotable comes from the epilogue, and it says, mortals ran either hot or cold, their souls like ice or fire. He had discovered long ago that ice served him best, but every now and then fire would surprise him. So obviously, this is from Dacre's point of view, and we get here that Roman is confirmed ice, which is potentially foreshadowing that is Roman gonna serve Dacre in the future. We don't know, but the very clear line says he had discovered long ago that ice served him best, and Roman is very cold. But he also is not a super strong ice. So I don't know if there's like the really, really cold people or just the little bit cold people. And like, I don't know if like the level of ice determines like how strong of a servant they are or whatnot. We really don't know. But I think we do get kind of a little bit of confirmation there, because Dacre does say like he was in a good mood. If not, he probably would have let Roman die. So, but this brought up a question for me, Keri. Do you think Forrest was hot or cold? And was he chosen by Dacre himself, or was he chosen by one of his goons and was a poor one that was a mistake to join his forces?
I feel like Forrest is going to be directly chosen. I don't know about ice or fire. What I am worried about, now that you're like mentioning this sentence, is like, will Iris be fire?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
I don't know.
What do you think?
I think Iris is fire. I think if we're, but I don't, and I don't know about Forrest. I, yeah, I don't know about Forrest. I do
I
think
don't know.
Forrest was chosen by Dacre himself, though.
I think that will help in our journey in Ruthless Vows. Like, if trying to get Roman back isn't what I'm assuming the book will be about. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, very interesting.
I did want to mention that when I was going through doing my quotables, that chapter 33 is titled The Snow in Kit's Bag. So My question is, has there been any other references to cold and ice before this in the entire book that we've maybe just missed? So, listeners, if you caught that, send them our way.
So I am going to say that this is potentially a note that Iris is ice
Mm.
because the quote, so the chapter is titled The Snow in Kit's Bag, but the quote that it relates back to is when all the letters start falling out of Kit's bag like snow, and the letters
Mm.
are from Iris. They're Iris's letters.
Oof.
So there it could be saying that Iris is ice too.
Interesting. Interesting. Well,
Yeah,
I guess
but
we'll see.
I was gonna say, even all of that, like there probably have been references that we just totally missed. Which
And
is
now I
funny
want to
because
reread it.
I was gonna say, we've read this book already, so
Yeah, like literally until I read your quotable last night, I was like, what? Has there been more? And I just completely missed it. And I was like, oh no, I guess I have to go reread this for the fifth time.
guess
No big
so.
deal. Anyways, let's go on to our final Divine Rivals sipping tea with our characters. Keegan. We're going to start with Keegan. Do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
I can go first.
Do it.
So I think that Keegan is a ginger peach tea
Ooh.
because she's spicy and she packs a punch, and ginger peach tea packs a punch for
Yeah.
sure. But she also has like the peach because she loves Marisol so much.
Oh, that's so cute. That's a really good one. I just was boring. I said black tea with milk, but I did also have like a spicy theme because I did hot honey. My mother in law's been super into
Oh.
hot honey. She's been putting that in her tea. And I was like, that sounds like something
Ooh.
Keegan would do.
Yeah.
Hot honey is delicious on eggs, we've discovered.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Dakra or Dakra. I never know how to say it.
The audiobook says Dakra, but it does feel a little awkward to say it that way.
Dakra. Doesn't matter. I did plain black tea with no sugar, no nothing. Boring, horrible. Not horrible, but not my favorite. Or just
Okay.
plain coffee. Just like hot black coffee.
Okay. So I did a blonde roast coffee with a splash of half and half.
Do you want to explain a little bit?
So Dakra is a very interesting character to me because I don't think he is all bad. I think
Hmm.
he's a lover scorned. And those are two very different things. So I think, obviously, like at this point in the book, we are on quote Enva's side, right? Because we've followed Iris and Roman with the soldiers that are fighting for Enva. And I'm not saying that Dakra is good because I don't think he is. He's like ruining towns and taking lives and all that stuff. But I don't think he's so dark to just be black coffee. And I don't think he's dark enough to be like a super strong coffee, which is why I chose like the blonde roast, because I don't think he's a tea. I do think he's a coffee, but I think he's been made coffee
Mm.
because he's a lover scorned.
Interesting. I like that. What about Enva? You want to tell us what Enva's? What you chose for Enva?
Sure. So I chose the new lavender cold foam matcha latte with oat milk.
Isn't this like your go-to drink right now?
So it's brand new from Starbucks, and I bought it for the first time 2 weeks ago. And normally I'm a chai latte girl, and since I bought it, this has been like my favorite drink. So
I've been wanting to try it so bad. I
it's
need
so
to
good.
go.
But I did choose it because she's very like musical and like,
Layered.
yeah, like a fruity type. She sings souls to where they go after they die, which is very like flowery. Like I think of like flowers at a grave site. So
Yeah. And lavender puts you to sleep.
exactly.
Boom. Look at you.
Look at that.
That was good.
What do you
Um
think?
I did a very, very light green tea. So I imagine she doesn't steep it very long. So it's
Okay.
closer to water, but she adds
Okay.
like a ton of sugar.
Okay.
So I went with like the sweetness vibe too.
Okay.
She
Okay.
might do this ice too.
Nice. Nice.
So for Forest, I did a green tea and a passion tea, but it's steeped together. And it has honey because I think he's complicated and will be both sides. And I think that would taste really good. And I kind of want to try it.
So, can you explain why steeped together is an important aspect of this?
I think because then it like mixes so well. Like his old life and his current life are going to be really steeped together, like the
Okay.
teas. So
Okay.
green, I'm taking like a little bit like I wish I could have done black. I would say black or a green tea and then
Okay.
together.
Okay.
But I think
Which
I
would
went
be
with
different than like if you had two cups, like one green and one raspberry, and like poured
mm,
them together, right?
yeah, because then the flavors would be different, I imagine. I want to try
Okay.
it. And if I try it, I'll be sure to post a video.
Yeah, let us know because I've never like even thought about them being different.
Me neither. I think it would be good.
I do
But what did
too.
you pick?
So I said that Forest was a throat coat tea.
Interesting. Is he going onto
And
Broadway?
no. So I think Forest is a throat coat tea for a couple different reasons. First, I think this encapsulates who he was at the beginning because he throat coat tea is not something you drink because you enjoy it. It's something you drink because you need it. And I think at the beginning, Iris really needed Forrest as an older brother. Right? I think she needed him to protect her and take care of her and like she yearned for that. Like that's what she really wanted. But she doesn't really need him to protect her anymore. She doesn't need him to be who she is, like who he is to her right now. And I think we get this like you still drink throat coat tea like sometimes, but you drink it when you need it. And I think she just really doesn't need him right now, which is why he's so prickly.
I like it.
For those listeners that for our listeners that are listening to us, I totally forgot to do this segment until about a minute and a half before we recorded.
You did
And
good.
I am very proud of myself because those explanations, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And wrote it down really quick. And I'm like, they ended up being much deeper than I originally intended.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
As a bonus, so we did Iris and Roman's drink in part 1. I'm saying Iris is definitely still a tea girly, and I'm going to stick with the honey citrus mint. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then Roman, we do learn that he's more of a coffee guy, so I think coffee with cream, and maybe sometimes he would treat himself to caramel syrup.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think he'd be like I like it, like a coffee black or a plain latte, but he would treat himself to like some sugar every now and then,
Okay. Okay.
some flavors.
Interesting.
What
I'm
about
gonna
you?
I'm gonna stay consistent on my Earl Grey tea.
Mm, I like it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
love it.
Very cool. So on to our magical moments for Divine Rivals. So this is our last one for Divine Rivals, and we didn't get too many magical moments in part 3, but these are things that I noticed that made me have additional questions, I guess. So this is a combination with magical and like potential theories in the future. So the first quote magic we get, and I'm saying this in quotes because this is something that I would like an answer to, and I hope we get an answer to, is actually from Marisol. So when Dacre's ethereals were flying and dropping the bombs, the B&B is shaking. And Marisol comes in, like we get this from Iris's point of view, and Marisol comes in and is just like standing there. And I imagine she's standing there like very like powerful and strong or whatever, but she's just standing there and she says a line that made my ears perk up, and she says, quote, "This house will not fall, not while I'm within it." And she's so confident in that. And it makes me think that Marisol or her house has some kind of magic that makes her so confident that the house will not fall while she's inside. We don't really know. Like, I was thinking about it, we don't really know a ton about Marisol or Keegan. So I'm wondering if we will learn more about that in Ruthless Vows, and maybe she does have some magic, or the B&B does have some magic, because I think we like I said, we don't get a ton of information about them. Secondly, we do get more of a description of what ethereals are and what they look like. So in chapter 40, we get a very clear description from Iris that says, "At first, she thought the clouds were moving, a thunderstorm was building, but then she saw the wings, the long and pronged, transparent in the fading light. She saw the monstrous white bodies emerge as they flew closer, nearly upon the town." So this is a very interesting description of them, and especially with like white bodies and transparent wings that are long and pronged, and I just thought that was very, very interesting. So
Yeah.
not so much magic, but a very good description of the magical creatures that we're seeing.
And definitely like that was not what was going on in my brain. I was like imagining them like kind of dragony.
Yeah, exactly. And lastly, we learn that human souls burn either hot or cold, fire or ice, and Dagra can sense them. So Dagra can sense, like, that's part of his magic. And he says that ice typically serves him best, which we already talked about, but he finds Roman in the field. And what was interesting to me here about this part is that we get a sidekick or a second in command named Val, and Val is able to open portals to the quote below, whatever that means. And he was able to bring Roman to the below. So it doesn't have to be Dacre himself. It can be one of his sidekicks or second in commands or whatever. We get a very, very short conversation between him and Val is like, that's really all we know about him, is that his name is Val. But this is again another part of something that I'm hoping we get more of in Ruthless Vows. So
For sure.
that's all for our magical moments today, which means we are moving on to our tour de tome. Woo woo. So, for our Tomes and Tropes podcast, after we go through each book on this podcast, we do a segment called Tour de Tome, where we basically go back and reflect on this book and give our ratings on it. The ratings will consist of 6 different topics: plot, character development, writing style, gut feeling, recommendability, and overall rating. And Keri and I both give our ratings on each of these individually.
Yeah, and we typically choose a different, like instead of stars, we pick like a different, very themed, like 4 out of 5. And today is typewriters. So we're gonna be doing
Yep.
5 out of 5 typewriters. So 1 through 5, or 0 through 5 if it really was that bad, but I don't think so. Ready
All
to start
right.
with plot?
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So for plot, I did 4. I
Okay.
just love the story, and I'm gonna have a hard time making anything lower than 4. So I'm just gonna preface with that.
Okay. I'm saying a 3.5 for plot because of part 3.
Mm, I get
It
that.
was just very rushed.
Character development?
Yeah. I said 4.
I said,
Mostly,
go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I am saying 4 mostly for Iris. I think she has such a huge character development arc in this book. She goes from this very almost small, meek character to a very confident, strong character. Strong is maybe too strong of a word, but she gets much more confident and much more like sure of herself, and processes through her grief throughout this whole process. So that's why I gave it a 4.
Gotcha. I gave mine a 3 actually, because I felt like
Okay.
nobody really developed enough for me
Okay.
compared to other books we read and I have read. So So it felt a little rough, but yeah, that's what I gave it.
Okay. How about writing style?
I gave mine 5,
Okay.
which is brave because I know people don't like her writing style, but I enjoyed it. I felt cozy, felt enjoyable.
Okay.
It reminded me of Narnia and Anne of Green Gables and all the
Yeah,
things.
but you're allowed to appreciate the writing styles that you
Yeah,
appreciate.
yeah. What did you put?
So I gave it a 4. And mostly, and I talked about it in this episode, but there were some times where I felt like I was being told how to feel rather than just allowing myself to
Mm,
feel the emotions. So that's kind of why.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah. How about
Good.
gut feeling?
5.
Okay.
I just love it. It makes me happy. When I think of Divine Rivals, I'm like, yeah, I love this.
Okay. I
What about
gave
you?
it a 3.
What? Why?
I I ugh, I don't I think I would have been okay after reading Divine Rivals, not reading Ruthless Vows.
Oh, dang.
So and that's why I gave it a 3. I think the book itself is like I had a good gut feeling. It's definitely a cozy fantasy, YA fantasy book, but book 1 should always make you want to read book 2. And I want to read it, but I don't feel like I need to know how the story ends. So that's why I gave it a 3.
I've been dying to read Ruthless Vows. So,
Really?
yeah, and I've been waiting so we could do it on the podcast and have live things like a good girl that I am. But here we are.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to do recommendability.
Yeah. So I gave this a 4.
I did too. I think I would recommend it. It was a good book across the board. Like you didn't have to worry about if it was like too dirty or like not really someone's cup of tea. But I felt like it was a good book for like a lot of people at a lot of different lifespans. So I feel like I would recommend it to most people.
It's a safe recommend book.
Yes,
It's like
definitely.
somebody finds out you read a lot and like it's like, "Oh, this is a safe book." So like this is a if you like this book, tell me what you like about it and then we can go from there.
Yeah, it is. It's a very safe book.
Yeah. And how about overall rating?
I gave 4.5, although on Goodreads I gave it a 5. Not gonna lie. But
Okay.
I think after reading part 3 again, I wanted more of the story. So I think that's why I knocked it down of half a star or half a typewriter.
Yeah. I
What
gave
about
it
you?
3.5 because
Mm.
I did give it 4 on Goodreads the first time I went through and read it, which is funny because I kept saying I gave it 3, but I did give it 4 on Goodreads. So maybe I'm being too harsh. But yeah, I gave it a 3.5, mostly because like my gut feeling was only a 3 and that kind
Mm.
of drug it down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
So, this is a little bit different than what we normally do because we normally don't read a series or we haven't read a series before. But, Keri, I was wondering if you had any questions off of Divine Rivals that you hope we get answers to in Ruthless Vows.
I feel like most of them were basic, like what happened to Roman, where's Addie Marisol Keegan, what happened to the typewriters, what happened completely to Forrest, like what was his journey. Is something similar happening to Roman? Will Roman and Iris be reunited? What about you? Do you have any
Okay.
questions
Yeah.
or things you want to see?
Yeah, so I had a lot of those too. One of the big ones is I want to see more magic and fantasy elements. The reason we have a magical moments section in this is because the first time we read through it, we struggled to really see the fantasy portions of it. So I'm hoping we get a little bit more of that and a little bit more of the gods and goddesses stories than we did in Divine Rivals. I want to know what happened in the Below to Roman. I want to know what happened to Forrest. I want to know, does Marisol have magic? I want to know why Keegan is gone so often. So
Interesting.
I was thinking about it, and yes, she's a captain in the army, but she, like, when we get the story from Marisol, it talks about how she travels so often, and like that's why she came to the B&B in the first place. I want to know why she's gone so often. Like, beyond just being in the army.
I get that.
I want to know, do we get to see Addie again? I hope so. I
I hope
really
so
like
too.
Addie.
She's awesome.
And lastly, I want to know, like, before Roman and Iris were able to write together write to each other because of the typewriters, but they don't have the typewriters anymore. Will they still be able to write to each other?
So those are good questions.
Yeah, I just want to know.
We'll find out soon.
Yes. But thank you all so much for listening to us today. If you liked today's episode, please rate and review us wherever you listen and give us 5 stars. It takes like 2 seconds to rate and review a podcast. Also, the best thing you can do for us or any other podcast you listen to is to share us with your friends. If you've been trying to get your friends to read Divine Rivals or want to continue on and read Ruthless Vows with us, this is the perfect opportunity for you all to read through this together. A quick note here: our next episode is going to be Between the Lines episode, so we will not be focusing on Ruthless Vows. We have some updates for you, some special segments. It'll be a great time, but after next episode, we will be going on to our coverage of Ruthless Vows.
For sure. And for more content, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Tomes and Tropes Pod. Or if you have any thoughts about this episode or this book, email us at tomesandtropespod@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear your thoughts specifically on Divine Rivals as a whole, what you thought about that, what you hope to see in Ruthless Vows, and what your favorite type of tea is. So we'll see you next week, like Becca said, for a special Between the Lines episode before we jump straight into Ruthless Vows.
Stay curious and keep reading.
Bye.